From being a long-time collector to now a store owner, it's taught me a lot in regards to what it actually means to shop local. We will discuss the advantages of shopping at an independent record store on this episode, Talking About Records. My name is G.I. Sanders from NTX Vinyl, a small chain of independent shops in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. If you're not local but you're in the U.S., you can shop online at ntxvinyl.com. Would love it if you'd subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Follow us across social media on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Let's talk about the advantages of shopping at an independent or local record store. Obviously, as a store owner myself, this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. And honestly, it's one that my opinion has evolved on a lot over the course of the last few years as I've gone from being a record collector just personally to being on the business side of things and actually opening up a store, multiple locations now, and doing a lot of online business as well. So I've got a lot going on in regards to records, whether it be pre-owned or new vinyl. And it really has given me an appreciation for what store owners do. So much work goes into everything, honestly, when you're running a small business. If you've ever done that type of thing, you are involved from A to Z, everything that happens in regards to the buying or selling of a record, right? So when I think about the biggest advantages of shopping at a local store, an independent store, regardless if that's in a physical location or online, talk about some of the differences between those. The thing that comes to mind first for me is curation. That's the biggest advantage that an independent or local store has. And what I mean by that is this. The records that are on the shelves, again, physical shelves or online inventory, whatever it may be, of an independent store, they are there for a reason. They are there because somebody chose for those to be featured, to be in stock. At any given time, if we're talking about new records, let's say first and foremost, there are not, tens or hundreds or thousands. There are tens of thousands, at least, records out there that you have the opportunity as a store owner to purchase and make available to your customers. So you can imagine the job and the workload that creates. Because if you've got tons and tons of options, that means it's up to somebody to go through and weed through all those, figure out what the customer base actually wants to flip through and buy, again, at a store or online. So the job as a buyer of vinyl records, in this case, because it's the format that I specialize in, it's a legit thing. Like I spend on any given day probably a good hour or two, sometimes longer, sourcing records. Now, if that's new records, that means scouring my distribution websites to find the needle in the haystack, find the stuff that's in stock that I know people will be looking for. Obviously, you want to grab things that are newly released, but it goes much deeper than that. And again, when you've got multiple distributors to choose from, and they've all got tens of thousands of albums available at your disposal, it can be a real chore to go through and cherry pick the ones you want to feature in your stores, because there are very few independent stores who can stock tens of thousands of records in regards to new inventory, because that costs a lot of money up front, right? So there's bigger stores that can maybe handle that, but for most smaller stores, you're going to stock a few thousand new records, and even that is a substantial investment up front. So you want to be really smart about that. And the process of going through and picking those out and choosing which genres, which eras of music, which specific artists, which specific albums, having the knowledge and the expertise to know what to buy and what not to buy based on whether or not it's a good price, whether or not it's a good pressing, it takes a lot of work. that's the curation that goes into an independent record store. I can't preface how important it is and how critical it is. And again, for me as a customer for many, many years, I had no real thought about that. I would just walk into a record store, whether it was local or I would go to a website that I knew was, an independent shop, and just kind of browse around, click and buy, not really thinking that, man, all of this is literally served up on a platter. Now, of course, lots of record stores carry the same records in regards to new inventory. So you can buy, if you can buy in one place, typically you can buy it in a lot of different places, depending on exclusivity and stuff like that. But by and large, all of those independent stores are going through that same process based on how well they know their customer base as far as what they're into, genre-wise, artist-wise, like I mentioned. So there's a significant amount of workload there in regards to new vinyl. Now, in regards to pre-owned curation, well, I think this one is a little bit more obvious. The work that goes into that, you've got to source where is a pre-owned collection. Sometimes it walks in the door, and that's great, so you don't have to go out and chase it. But you still got to deal with the communication. You got to deal with coming to terms in regards to an agreement of what you're going to purchase it for. Then you've got to have a place to store it. You've got to load it up. You've got to transport it. I've said this a lot, but then you've got to clean it, grade it, sleeve it, prices, all that, right? That all comes secondary to the curation, because for myself, and I think like most record store owners, you don't just buy pre-owned record collections blind. You go in and you say, hey, I know, 50 or 75% of this collection is going to be right where I want it as far as what my customers are looking for. There may be a portion, 25% in this example, to where none of that's going to be sellable. And so again, it's all about curation. It's about making sure, if you acquire a large collection, making sure you get out the albums, the artists, the genres to the shelves first, based on what your customers want and based on their buying habits, right? And so it really is. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's the funnest part of the job is buying records, right? Even when I'm not buying them for myself, I'm still turning around and selling them, but it is still a joy to be able to go in and choose music that I love, that I then want to, pass forward to my customers, right? That's an amazing part of the job, like I mentioned, and I really do think it is the biggest differentiator between an independent or local store versus a big box or a big chain or whatever it may be, right? I think that personal touch in regards to what's on the shelves or what's on the new arrivals page or wherever it may be, I think goes a long way, and it really not only differentiates independent stores from, again, bigger corporations, big box and chains, but it differentiates independent stores from each other, right? My shop, and what you'll find that I sell online or in any of my locations, differs completely from what other shops right in my area sell. And certainly when you go nationally, internationally, they're all different. That's because there are so many options out there for a record store to be able to curate those again, artists and genres and albums specific to their customer base. So it's really a unique thing, and I think that's what makes it so exciting to visit local record stores, is you really don't ever know what you're going to find. Again, you may come to you may come to learn that a lot of the newer releases and back in stock stuff may be similar across some stores, but by and large, I bet 90% of the inventory in any local or independent store, physical or online, is going to differ in a lot of ways based on that store owner or whoever's doing the buyer for that store. So curation is the number one differentiator for me. It's the number one advantage that I have as a store owner, because I know my customers, I know what they buy. So when I go to purchase more records, whether it be pre-owned or new, I've always got that in the back of my head as far as, man, I know that I sell a lot of this. I know I sell a lot of that. Or, hey, I've never stocked this before, but I know if my customers buy X, Y, and Z, they'll probably like A, B, and C, So that's the game. And that's so much of the fun of being a store owner. And again, what I think really separates independent stores from each other and from big boxes. The second thing that I will point out in regards to a big advantage for independent stores is customer service. This is a tricky one, especially in regards to the most important part of customer service, I think, which is returns. One of the big things that people really key in on in regards to retail when you're buying anything from a store is what's the return policy, right? And this can be tricky because, if you go buy from someone like Amazon, they pretty much have a no questions asked. If you don't want the product, you just send it back. It doesn't cost you anything. And I know a lot of people buy from someone like Amazon because of that. It makes it easy. They simplify it. They've got an app that they've spent years and millions of dollars developing that makes it really easy for customers to deal with that stuff. And that's a huge advantage for them, right? So how does an independent store combat that? Well, first and foremost, I can only speak for myself, but I will absolutely take any album back that you as a customer is not happy with, right? Maybe it's a brand new record and it's got a defect. Maybe it's warped. Maybe it's scratched right out of the factory, or it's a pre-owned record and maybe we missed it and we overgraded it, or maybe even though it looks great visually, maybe it doesn't sound good and you want to return those. I take records back all the time from customers. Unfortunately, new and pre-owned, it doesn't make any difference to me whether you've purchased it in my shop or whether you've purchased it online. It doesn't really make a difference. I think that's just a part of doing business. You can't compete with Amazon if you're not going to offer that, right? So I think that customer service in regards to returns is definitely one where you've got to at least meet the expectations, right? Now, how do you differentiate though? How do you go above and beyond that? Well, I think that's where the personalized touch comes in. I'm sitting here talking to you on camera, and if you want to get in touch with me because you've got a question about a record, shoot me an email. Reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram or however you want to communicate, and you can get in touch with a real person who can actually discuss the issue or the topic, whatever it may be, right? So I think providing that level of customer service, customer support is really critical. And I think most independent stores know that and do go the extra mile, or at least they should. I've heard horror stories of people that avoid their local shops because that's not the case, and that's really frustrating here. And I don't think people who have that mentality from a ownership perspective will stick around very long. Not in this day and age. Like, it could have survived back in the day. You could just rest on, hey, I'm the only record store in town and you shop here, you don't get it, right? But that doesn't work anymore. Everyone's got options. You can go online and comparison shop every single record. It doesn't matter how rare, how new, how used. You can go check out your options in regards to price, in regards to condition, in regards to availability, very easily. And so knowing all of that, the customer service aspect of running a small business, especially a record shop, I think cannot be overstated. It's absolutely critical, and it's something we try our best at. Like, we don't always succeed. Like, nobody's perfect, and a lot of times you just get busy, and it's hard to keep up with the demands and the requests and the issues and the returns and all those things. But all you can do is super serve. All a store can do is be as personable as possible and as transparent as possible. That's the other thing, is I tell people right off the bat what the issue is. If it was our fault, if it was, someone at our store, if it was a distributor, whatever it is as it pertains to that item or that order, I'm always straightforward with customers, because I think that's all you can really do. Shoot people straight, and hopefully they give you the respect back. And so customer service is huge. And again, I think it's another area where, if done right, an independent store can really differentiate themselves and turn it into a huge advantage. The last big advantage or differentiator that an independent store has over big boxes and chains, I think, is community. I think this is a no-brainer. It could be the first on the list, honestly, because that's how important it is. I can't stress how much more engaged and how much more enthused about this hobby I became as a collector, going back a few years, when I really engaged with the vinyl community, not only at local record stores, but online, across the board. Wherever that engagement happens, wherever that discussion happens, it may be just one or two friends you have, that could be your vinyl community, and that's totally fine. But the ability to discuss a specific album, the ability to ask questions, the ability to learn and gain knowledge about music, about the hobby, about, again, a specific album, the differences between a pressing and the labels that pressed it, or the pressing plants that actually manufactured it, all of those intricacies. I think you start to peel back the layers of that when you get involved in the vinyl community. When you're out on an island and you're on your own, and you buy records and you listen to records, totally fine. A lot of people, it ends right there, and I get that. That's totally cool. But if you want to really take it to the next level and get engaged with this hobby, the community aspect is huge. And the local stores, the independent stores, they're the ones that fuel that, in my opinion. I do everything I can to create community, to engage in the community of not only my customers, but just people I know, people, again, locally, online. It doesn't matter where and how it happens, because there's a lot of different means for that today, especially online, especially social media. It doesn't really matter where and how. What matters is that it's happening. And that discussion and that exchange of knowledge and all that really, in my opinion, is what's pushing this hobby forward. Because if you just have a lot of passive listeners for vinyl, that doesn't really equate, because it's not a passive listening experience. Or it can be, but then it's not going to be near as addictive. It's not going to be near as fun. It's not going to be near as engaging, because if you just want a passive listening experience, then just stream it, honestly. Like that, there's no need to then drop the needle and tend to the record and spend money on records, which are not cheap, and on equipment, which is not cheap. But if you do choose to do all of that, do it in a way that involves the community, because again, it's gonna pay dividends in regards to how much more enjoyment you get back out of it when you're sharing your experiences and your expertise with people. I think that's really huge. So again, independent stores for me, they're the ones who really fuel all of that. They drive all that. They act as a central hub. It doesn't matter if it's a Facebook group or a brick and mortar store, wherever it is. Like, independent stores are kind of the hubs that inspire a lot of that community and inspire people to come together and get to know each other and interact, and all those types of things that, again, for me, make this hobby so much more than just dropping the needle on a record. Like, that's the end game. That's kind of the middle point, if you will. The eye of the storm is like just listening to that record, but think of everything else that happens around it. That's what really is exciting. And for me as a store owner, that's what keeps me really fueled and impassioned to do this day after day, is because there are people out there like that who really do sleep and breathe this hobby, and love the music and love the format that much. So I think, just to recap, the curation, the customer service and support, and then also the community. Those are the three big advantages I think that record stores have, independent record stores have, over big boxes. And again, it doesn't matter if it's online or if it's physical, a physical location. I think all of these things can relate to both of those in a lot of different ways. So that's my take on the advantages of the independent store. I like to think I'm on the positive side of those, but I really appreciate you watching. As always, would love your feedback. Would love to hear some other things that you love about shopping at your local shop or your local independent shop, online or physically, versus, let's say a big box or a chain or whatever it may be. Again, really appreciate the support as always. This has been a topic I love talking about. So we'll be back again soon. Another episode of Talking About Records. My name is G.I. Sanders, and we'll see you guys again next time.